For my next flower picture, I thought I'd have a go at a blue iris using some pigment markers. I have to admit though that this is my second attempt at this because the first attempt didn't go so well, and if you want to see what happened with that, then the link for that video is below. So for this attempt, I decided that I was going to pencil it out first of all, so I used a nice soft 2B pencil to sketch out all of the petals, the big fat outer petals and the sort of curly, tight inner petals as well. I got everything sketched out nice and lightly before I decided to begin with the markers. And I decided that I wanted to start in the very center of the flower because the petals here had this lovely bluey purple kind of look to them. So I kicked off using a Mauve marker, which as you can see is this nice kind of gentle purple kind of marker, not too dark, and I'm putting in the kind of shadow areas on this first petal. Then I switched to Violet Blue Deep, which as you can see is a much darker blue but with a kind of purpley edge. Now here's where I'm doing something different. I'm blending in these two colors using Mauve again. So normally I would go straight in with the white blender here to try and blend colors together. But I've decided to try and use the colors to blend together. I am using the white blender now just to do the edges, just to make sure the edge of this petal is really kind of highlighted and bright. But what I'm trying to do is trying to blend the colors together using a lighter color rather than the white blender all the time, because I'm finding that if I use the white blender too much, it kind of pales the colors out, dulls the colors out. So I'm just using Mauve and Violet Blue Deep here, but what I'm trying to do is use the Mauve to blend the Violet Blue Deep into the Mauve to try and get a kind of nice smooth transition. What I'm also trying to do is trying to use a little bit less of the darker color, because the darker colors are usually just so strong and so juicy and loads of kind of pigment comes out on the paper and looks really good, but it can totally swamp your lighter colors when you're trying to blend them together. So what I'm trying to do is exercise a bit of restraint, and I'm trying to use a little bit less of the darker color. You're probably watching this now and thinking, no you haven't, you've just whacked loads on. And you're right, even with the fine nibs, it's kind of, I'm just having to work really carefully to try and not overload the thing with all of this dark pigment. But the best thing is, already on this second attempt, I can see that I'm getting really nice bright colors, even though I'm kind of gently using the white blender. Because I'm blending mostly with the colors, blending the colors together, I'm getting some really nice bright colors popping through, the blues and the purples. And yeah, I'm overloading a teeny little bit here with the kind of the Violet Blue Deep. I should be using a little bit less here, but I go a bit overboard. So here I am blending it in with the Mauve, but it's a really nice, strong, bright color. And as I sort of blend it outwards, I lose some of that darker color and it begins to look a bit mauve again. So for the edge here, I decide to use the white blender. And the best thing about the white blender is if you get a little bit of color left on the tip, you can actually use that and kind of blend around with that, which is what you can see me do there. Kind of like, a blending tool that you use with a pencil, for smudging and stuff. Once you've got a bit of gray on the end of the blending tool, you can also use that to do little bits of kind of pencil shading and little half tone with it, and you don't actually even have to pick up the pencil. And the white blender can work that way as well. Here I'm working on the last petal in the center. And again, I'm just using the Mauve and the Violet Blue Deep, blending those together as much as possible, but then using the white blender pen just to do some of the kind of edges, to keep the edges nice and highlighted, but also to drag that white blender pen downwards, creating little creases and hopefully a little bit of veins in the leaf, which suggests a kind of 3D, like the petal is growing outwards, and before it becomes, fully shaped, it's quite creased, and you've got these little edges. And in order to do that, I need to keep cleaning the white blender on a spare piece of paper so that I get a nice white streak from it. So with the petals done in the center, what I start doing is moving out to the three big main petals that are growing outwards from this blue iris. And the first thing that I do is I put in the yellow kind of spear, kind of arrow kind of shape, which runs down the very center of the petals. So I'm doing this top petal first of all. So I just pop in some Winsor yellow, nice bright yellow here. And then I do a little bit of shadow areas near to the center using Winsor Yellow Deep. So a slightly orangey, slightly darker version of the yellow. So with the yellow center done, I'm moving into the main colors of the petal. And here you can see me using Violet Blue Deep and also introducing a new color, which is Sky Blue. And I'm just sketching a small part here, which is the kind of where the petals kind of curl over, which gives you that nice kind of 3D feel. So I'm just blending together. Again, look, no white blender yet. I'm just using the Sky Blue to blend in with the Violet Blue Deep. the blue iris has got this really, really distinct kind of pattern on its petals, this kind of really blue veiny kind of pattern, and I really struggled to do that in my first attempt at this. So this second attempt I'm using fine nibs, and I'm also using just these two colors, trying to blend these together carefully. Again, no white blender yet, I'm just putting on a bit of violet blue deep and then using the sky blue to blend around this kind of line that I've done, which is going to be one of the darker veins in the petal. So what I'm trying to do is make it light on both sides of it. So after using the white blender pen here, just to correct a little bit of a spill where I've gone over an edge where I didn't want to, I decided that technique's really going to work. So I know that what I can do here with the violet blue deep is put some kind of downward streaks with white gaps, white paper gaps in between, and then I can use the sky blue to blend those dark lines sort of around and downwards towards the center. I want them to be paler towards the center near that yellow kind of like arrow shape, and I want them to be darker towards the top edge. And in order to keep the colors nice and bright, I'm deliberately just trying to use the sky blue as my light color to blend in the dark color at the moment. So I'm, dragging the dark color streaks downwards. Then when I think I need to use the white blender, I use it. I go in and I'm flicking these white blender strokes upwards back into the leaf, so I can really, really exaggerate those kind of veiny shapes by keeping them dark and light color up through the middle of them. So I've found a technique that works for me to show this very, very distinct patterning on the petals. So now what I have to do is slightly change some of these lines. They've been able to come just vertically straight down so far, but as the lines sort of work around to the purple inner petals, they start to kind of point inwards, almost a bit like spokes on a wheel, very rough spokes. So that's what I need to do now, and you can see that I've done that using the violet blue deep. I've started to angle those strokes so that they are coming from the outside of the petal and they're pointing towards the center of the flower. And I'm still relying on blending the colors together with lighter colors, but if it starts to get a bit too dark, that's where I can break out the white blender like right now, and I can use that to just soften up that edge which was getting a bit too dark towards the middle, and I can flick those strokes outwards and upwards into the petal there to show those veins. Hopefully, as I work down into this last part of this half of the petal, you can see what I mean when I'm talking about the veins and the way that the kind of veiny look of an iris petal, points from the outside of the petal in towards the very center of the flower. And as I work on blending these areas in using the sky blue, I'm also thinking about the part of the petal that is very, very close to the center of the flower, because here it's not just blue, it's got a kind of purple kind of tinge to it. As you can see, those petals right in the very center, I used mauve and violet blue deep to do, and as the bigger petals get closer to those petals, they've also got kind of a purple tinge. Either it's reflected light from the purple petals in the center, or they just are a little bit more purple closer to the center. So I whack in a bit of mauve there quite roughly, just sketching it over the top of the lines I've already done, and then blend it in. So I'm hopefully getting a hint of that kind of purpley mauve there on the very, very sort of like bottom part of that petal. So with just half of this petal done, I'm feeling like it's way more successful at what I wanted to achieve than my very first attempt. So I'm glad I've done this second attempt. And now I can just like speed it up so you can see the rest of the process as I fill in the other half of this particular petal using exactly the same technique that's just working and getting those kind of angled lines towards the center. You also get to see my little scribble bit on the left-hand side of this bit of paper. That's my rough bit of the paper. And so whenever I need to clean a nib, either the sky blue or the white blender or anything, I just do a quick scribble over there to try and take the color off the nib and to reveal the original color of whichever marker I'm using. I've just got to say as well, it was so much easier to do the kind of pattern work on the petals this time around, being able to use the fine nib. On my first attempt, I deliberately tried to do everything with the chisel nib, and it was just too big and too chunky to do those lovely, delicate kind of veins. So the fine nib was absolutely essential for that. And I've also got to say that using the white blender sparingly was really, really helpful in getting that transition with the petals from dark on the outside to these lovely kind of pale bits right next to the yellow. Another thing that I've started to do with the pigment markers is use them far more lightly and gently over the surface of the paper when I'm trying to blend. It is a very thin paper, so it needs a slightly more gentle touch, and it seems to work really well to actually blend two colors together. Here you can see me just adding a little bit more violet blue deep. I felt like some of the shadows in the center weren't as dark as they should have been, so I decided to go and add some raw marker and put on a second layer just in the very dark patches, using the violet blue deep in the hope that 2 layers of this particular color would make it look darker and, you know, give a much stronger shadow contrast. So I've still got the background to do, but at this point I'm really pleased with the way that the flower's looking. And here they are, first attempt and second attempt, side by side, so you can have a look. And drop me a line and let me know which one you prefer. I clearly prefer the one on the right because it's got more definition, I feel it's got more detail and more depth, and it's much more what I set out to do in the first place. Hopefully you found this video really useful and you want to watch some of my other pigment marker videos, and if so, there's a bunch of links below and even a playlist for them as well. And if you subscribe to my channel, then you will never miss any of my other artsy tutorial videos ever again.